How does a judgment affect community property debt? Have you ever wondered how a legal judgment can impact debts shared between spouses during a divorce? Understanding this can be quite important when navigating property division. Let's break it down. First, community property debt is defined as any debt incurred by either spouse during the marriage. Under community property laws, both spouses are generally responsible for these debts, even if only one spouse's name is on the debt. Now, if a judgment is made against one spouse for a debt, the effects on community property debt can vary. Since community property is owned equally by both spouses, a creditor can typically pursue community property assets to satisfy a debt incurred by one spouse. This means that even if only one spouse is personally liable for the debt, the creditor may have a claim against the community property that belongs to both spouses. On the flip side, separate property owned individually by one spouse is generally protected from a judgment creditor of the other spouse. Separate property includes assets acquired before the marriage or those received as gifts or inheritances during the marriage. These assets are not subject to community debts. After a divorce, the division of debts is governed by the divorce judgment or settlement agreement. The court will determine how to allocate responsibility for debts between the spouses. However, this allocation does not change the rights of creditors. Even if the divorce decree assigns a debt to one spouse, creditors can still pursue either spouse or community property to satisfy the debt until it is fully paid off. In some states, certain types of property, such as tenants by the entirety's property, may be protected from judgment liens against one spouse, even after divorce. A judgment lien can attach to community property, allowing the creditor to enforce the judgment by placing a lien on property owned by both spouses. This can complicate property division during divorce, as the lien affects the value and transferability of community assets. During divorce proceedings, courts consider all debts alongside assets to ensure an equitable division of the marital estate. Debts classified as community property are typically divided between spouses in a manner the court deems fair. This division may not always be an exact 50-50 split. The goal is to balance the distribution of both assets and liabilities so that each spouse receives a fair share of the net marital estate. In summary, a judgment against one spouse can impact community property debt by allowing creditors to pursue community assets to satisfy the debt. Divorce judgments allocate debt responsibility between spouses but do not alter creditors' rights to collect from community property. Understanding these distinctions is essential for managing debt division and protecting assets during divorce and separation.